Welcome back to Elevated Conversations. I am your host, Diana Pequeno, and this is a space where we explore the ideas, experiences, the perspectives that invite us to live with greater awareness, a deeper connection, and more curious understanding about ourselves and the world around us. Today's guest is someone whose work spans multiple forms of creative expression. He is an artist, an author, a storyteller, a visionary whose message continues to find its way through books, music, film, and meaningful conversation. In his latest book, Soloism, he explores themes of self discovery, identity, belonging, and what it means to develop a deeper relationship with ourselves in a world that often encourages us to seek answers everywhere else but within. And I was genuinely most intrigued that it wasn't just simply about the book itself, but the larger conversation surrounding it. The conversation that invite us to consider the perspectives, the challenges, allows us to dive deeper and to examine what is really happening internally and externally. So today we're going to explore those ideas. I am so excited to welcome today Solomon Yemane to Elevated Conversations. Solomon, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. I'm deeply honored to be here and I am very grateful. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. If we could, for those who aren't familiar with you and your work, tell us a little bit about yourself and where the journey began, and begin wherever you like.
Well, as a child, I was always kind of gifted or talented or artistic, you could say. And I was also always quiet and to myself, more stoic, right? Just as a kid, I kind of was just always to myself and I was creating in the corner somewhere, coloring, writing, creating. And eventually I'd go on to like win awards for my writing and like elementary school for creative writing and writing has always been my strong suit. So as I got older, I decided that I wanted to change the world and I wanted to make the world a better place. Not only was it my desire to do such, but a lot of the synchronicities in my life, a lot of the things that I began to experience aligned with that belief that like I'm here to change the world and I'm here to increase the evolution or to facilitate the evolution and increase the vibration of the world. And so I began to write about it. But I also wanted to influence the younger generation. So I began writing in rhyme and rapping and writing over instrumentals. And so I became a hip hop artist, but I also write novels and I also write movies. But they all serve the same purpose, which is to raise the vibration of the collective consciousness, similar to how the Matrix did, similar to how the Terminator did. And eventually I went on to collaborate with the creator of the Matrix and the Terminator, Sophia Stewart. She took me under her wing. So I became her mentor, or she became my mentor, and I'm her protege. And yeah, so we're working together. She's teaching me a lot about the creative process, writing books, movies, and I do my own thing making music, but I do have teachers and guides who are showing me how to get to that next level of actually catalyzing change, like being a catalyst for change, and you know, getting that ball rolling, and yeah, setting that in motion.
That's amazing. Would you say that there's a specific philosophy or timeline that is the inspiration behind all of this? Or would you say it's a combination of multiple things?
I wouldn't want to call it a combination. I'd say it's more of a reduction. When I was growing up, I read a lot, and one of the best books I've ever read to this day, I read about it at 11 years old. It's called The Tao of Pooh. The Tao of Pooh is a book that talks about how Winnie the Pooh is the epitome of Buddhism, how he is the quintessential model of what it is to be a Zen Buddhist, somebody who's just always kind of happy, someone who's kind of just like seeking, life, not really any greed, not really any, just somebody who wants to explore life and who wants to make friends and who wants to be happy. The book really broke down to a child at 11 years old, 10 years old, the core principles of Buddhism and the core principles of Zen. And I began to read more Taoist philosophy, like the Tao Te Ching, and I began to read more and more about Buddhism. So that was really my introduction into spirituality. So I'm always going to come from more of like a Zen Tao Buddhist lens. But growing up, my household was Christian. So we went to church. I got the Christian doctrine, the gospel. And to this day, I read the Bible and I believe in the Messiah. So, I lean more towards that Judeo Christian philosophy. But I'm always going to come from the lens of a higher understanding that these principles are metaphysical. It's not just historical information and historical data. This is metaphysical information that we're talking about, something that's happening on a higher level perception, on a higher dimension. So, when I read the Bible, I'm not reading it as like this happened and then that happened and that happened. It's more of a blueprint for how the universe works. And that's kind of what Soloism is. It's more of a blueprint of how the universe works, but without putting a religion behind it. I do mention the Most High. I do mention Yeshua. I do mention Yahweh within the book. I do mention Buddha, I'm sure, in the book. But at the end of the day, I wanted to take religion out of it so that everybody could evolve and everybody could have that shift in consciousness, you know. So it's not just for one religion. It's not just for one ideology. It doesn't come from one ideology. It really comes from that understanding that I had as a child of what is the truth and experiencing the truth. And I remember watching The Matrix as a child in 1999 and seeing it for the first time and understanding a lot of it. And also how impactful it was on me when they said there is no spoon. I don't know if you remember that scene, but
I do. I
there,
do.
there was a child holding a spoon, and Neo asked, like, "How do you do that?" He's able to bend the spoon with his will, and he says, "In order to bend the spoon, you have to realize the simple truth that it's not the spoon that you're bending, but simply yourself. So the universe is is a projection of yourself, right?" And so this book is a microcosm of that universe, and it's a microcosm of who I am. So by reading it, you're going to get a peek into that world. You're going to get a peek into my mind. You know? And it's 33 years of my life experience and understandings and struggles and pain and revelations and all the things that I've come to know condensed into about 60 pages.
That's
These
fascinating.
these 60 pages, they're my life.
I study and interested in the philosophy of Taoism and religions across the board because I feel like they're all so interconnected. Sometimes the world, to me, gives me the impression that there's such a divide when it comes to that. I realize that there's the storylines, comes from the Bible, Taoism, philosophy, interconnectionness, self awareness. There's so many things that connect and they're just shared differently, but there's so much in alignment. Thank you for sharing that. While we're on the subject of your book, which I was excited to talk about, could you share why you chose the title Soloism?
Because in the lifestyle of the streets where unfortunately I've had to overcome that lifestyle. So, I didn't grow up in the ghetto or the hood, but I did grow up in like a low income neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. Then I moved over here to Las Vegas and I also grew up in kind of a low income neighborhood. So I guess I could say I kind of grew up in the hood, but even in those environments, I've always had a thirst for knowledge, a thirst for wisdom, a thirst for understanding. And I've always been a reader. I've always been a seeker of truth, even as a child. And so in the streets, ism is a word that is synonymous with knowledge or games or wisdom, guidance. So it is a combination of my name and that term. And also in like I believe just, regular world ism is the study of or the ideology of or principles of solo. It's the perfect title because it's not only my principles that I'll pass on to my children, but it also speaks very deeply about solitude and using solitude to transform yourself from one state of being to a higher state of being. Like a caterpillar turns into a butterfly and is able to fly. It's not just about the beauty aspect and you've got all of these, flashy things that people can adore, but you were limited before and you're able to overcome those limits and transcend. And so that's what soloism is about. It's not about trying to fit in or conform to the thinking of people or schmooze and tell them what they want to hear so that they fall in love. It's about being okay with being in a room by yourself and sitting there quietly. And if you can do that, I truly believe in my heart that you can do anything.
That's
And that's why
beautiful.
it's called soloism.
That's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that. Why do you think that so many people struggle with themselves, and perhaps what gets in the way of them embracing solitude?
Because so many things have been set in motion before we were even born. So many things were set in motion prior to our conception that it's hard to just stop the momentum in one lifetime. There's patterns of racism that are passed down generation to generation. There's patterns of abuse. There's patterns of alcohol, substance abuse. There's patterns that just go on, eating habits, and they just pass on from generation to generation. It becomes a genetic code in their genes. So I don't think people are bad, but there's something in our genetic code at the moment that I believe comes out. And sometimes it could be violence, it could be criminality, it could be whatever it is. People are perfectly good people, with sound minds and loving hearts and families that love them, but somewhere along the line, something was set in motion that could not be stopped by that one person in their lifetime. And so I feel like if you really do want to make a change, you've got to go to a higher level of consciousness. Einstein said that a problem cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness that it was created at. I don't want to get too spiritual here, but I believe in spiritual covenants, and I believe that there are bloodlines that do make spiritual covenants with certain spiritual forces. So it would do good for people to pray and for people to seek a higher level of consciousness so they can change their own reality from a higher plane, making decisions about their lives from a higher realm. Some people think that they can work themselves into enough money so that they're going to be happy. Some people think that they can get enough women into bed that it's going to make them happy, or take enough pictures with enough celebrity is going to make it, or do whatever. Like that, none of that is going to satisfy, what you're seeking. If you desire true peace, if you desire happiness, if you desire, self love and content, take the time to meditate, take the time to pray, take the time to go into those higher realms and speak to your creator and say, I want to be free of these things. I want to be free of my self doubt. I want to be free of my depression. I want to be free of my whatever it is. And I truly believe that there is a higher power that will free you if you seek that higher powers. And a lot of times we just think that we can do it ourselves. Like soloism is not self-reliance. It's not like independence. It's truly realizing that you are the portal to a higher source. You are the portal to a higher realm. You are the door. You are the key. You are the one who can do all things. Right? You can stop the bullets. You can jump over the building. You can jump up and slow down time. Like all of these things we saw in the Matrix are symbolic. They're metaphors to express how we can do anything that we conceive in our minds. You know what I mean? But we have to realize that we are the ones. We are that gateway, that portal to the higher power, to the source. But until then, we're either going to be, just slaves to our DNA, or we're going to be, always trying to fit in and being controlled by outside influences. And I don't think that's a pathway to a happy life. I don't think that's the pathway to spiritual wealth. I don't think that's the pathway to true abundance. No, the pathway is going to be through turning within and exploring yourself, self discovery. The more you learn, the more you earn. So if you want to earn more, you have to learn more. One of the best quotes I've heard is, your frequency is what you frequently see. Your frequency is what you frequently see. So if you want to change your frequency, you can change what you're putting into your brain. You can change what you're watching, what you're hearing, what you're eating. This will literally raise your vibrations, and so that's another way that people can free themselves from whatever problems they're creating. It's like changing those habits, changing the environments that you're in, changing the people that you're around, changing, your diet, the music you listen to, the movies you're like, everything is creating a result, which is your life. So if we can change a few of those things, we can get a better result.
It seems that we share a lot of the same ideologies and beliefs on so many different levels, and that humans naturally are seeking love and connection. I'd like to ask you, when it comes to self discovery and solitude, is there a difference between being alone and feeling alone?
Of course, 100%. Because we're talking about perspective, right? The world is round. So either side of the world you're standing on, you can either be on top of the world, or you could be on the bottom of the world, and the world could be on top of you, depending on how you look at it. Like me and you right now are on the earth, but depending on your perspective, we're either on top of the earth or we're upside down. You know what I'm saying? It's all about your perspective. And how do you change your perspective? You change it by having gratitude, having appreciation, right? Counting your blessings, being able to say, okay, here I am, an individual, Solomon Yemane, and I can look around and I can be grateful for the beautiful weather here in Las Vegas. I could be grateful for your time and the fact that you wanted to have this interview with me. And I can look around and be grateful for everything around me and the blessings that life, you know, has for me. I have my attitude, it becomes good because I have faith. And so I think being alone is kind of the canvas where you can paint your own reality. And if you choose to, with that canvas and that paintbrush of your attention, you choose to feel alone, that is your free will. You can feel that way because that is your creative freedom, you know. But you also have you have a whole bunch of other colors, reds and yellows and greens and blues and purples that you can use to create and paint a better picture in your life. And you can do it from where you are right now. You don't have to like go find somebody else to do it for you or do it with you. You can sit there and say, okay, what do I want my life to look like? And really make those decisions. But the third chapter of my book is called Self Determination, because you're not meant to stay in solitude. You're not meant to stay isolated. This is meant for you to withdraw so you can recharge, so you can make sure that your plan is solid, it's clear. It's the seed that you plant into the earth. The earth is there and it's gathering all the nutrients and it's gathering and it's incubating in the darkness until it begins to grow. And then it comes out of solitude, it comes out of that isolation, and it begins to bloom and become what it was meant to be. This is the natural genetic code. that we go through as humans. This is the process that I'm talking about, the process of awakening and becoming, but as human beings, we get to determine the fruit that we bear. So when we're in that season of isolation, that season of solitude, that's when we decide, okay, who do I want to be and what fruit do I want to bear? And then you begin to move in that direction. And you can be anything in the world you want to be, a photographer, you can be a movie star, you can be a musician, an athlete, but it's going to take clarity of vision, and it's going to take, you knowing exactly what it is you want to do and taking the steps to do it. Eventually other people will come. Eventually other people will join you. But in the beginning stages, gonna feel like you might be in a dark space. In the beginning, it might feel like you're alone. But this is the beginning of a process, right? Of becoming something greater.
Absolutely. So, on the subject, you mentioned connection, perspective, and social media. So, I believe that technology has changed not just our relationship with ourselves, but ultimately, I believe that people are seeking love external and internally. How would you say that plays out in the world of being solo versus in isolation, looking for connection externally and internally?
Well, I believe it's a completely different game. It's a completely different sport. It's like somebody playing football, somebody playing basketball. We're playing by different rules. And that allows me to do things that maybe those people cannot do. It may allow me to say the things that are on my mind, and it might not gel with everybody. But because I'm not dependent on their approval, because I'm not dependent on their validation, I can have that peace of mind within myself to say, I'm going to say what I need to say anyway, and that's freedom in itself, right? In the day and age where everyone is looking for love, it can become a trap where everybody's looking for approval. Everyone's looking for validation. Everyone's looking to fit in, because if they don't, then they're going to feel like they're not getting that love that they need so badly. When instead of understanding that they are the source of the love, you are the source of love. You don't need that love. They need your love. So you give it to them. Right? That's my perspective as a soloist, as the soloist. I don't feel like I'm getting anything from the people. I feel like I only have something to give. Right? The only thing they can give me is a representation or a symbolic gesture, which is a couple dollars or something like that. But what I'm imbuing into their life is something that $33 or that $50 is not gonna even come close to doing. So I think that's the difference. It's like, and it's all love and it's all respect, but I am installing into people to just one with yourself. Have you ever heard the story of Siddhartha?
I don't believe so.
So Siddhartha is a story, it's a Buddhist story. And it talks about how a young man was in town talking to his friend, and his friend goes, "Oh, Buddha's in town. I want to go see Buddha. You should come with me." One of the friends is like, "No, I'm not really interested. I don't want to go." And so the other friend goes and he goes to see Buddha, and Buddha imbues them with all of this beautiful knowledge and wisdom. One of the friends tells Buddha, "Yeah, I have a friend, but he didn't want to come here today." But Buddha was curious and he went to go seek out the original friend. And he said, "Why didn't you come listen to me speak today?" The Buddha asked. And in response, the man was like, "There's no way that you can teach me what you learned in your hour of enlightenment." So what he understood was that enlightenment is something that you have to experience for yourself. It's not something that anybody can give to you. It's not something that anybody can just tell you about, or you can't read about it and experience it or watch a movie and you're enlightened now. Like, it's a journey that you have to personally take for yourself. And this book is that journey. from the first page to the last page. It's taking you on that enlightenment journey so that when you get to the end of the book, you're in that state of transcendence. It's really just giving you the consciousness. They call it Christ consciousness. I'll say that. It's helping people to reach the Christ consciousness. Yeah. By the end of the book for sure.
That's
Or
beautiful.
or a Buddha consciousness or a Krishna consciousness or whatever you want to call your deity that symbolizes holiness, but a higher transcendent, the truth, the reality of life, and the enlightenment, right? Not just the knowledge and the wisdom and the information, but the actual experience. This is getting you closer to that experience.
On the topic of conscious living, and something that you shared with me, when it comes to people who are searching for this enlightenment, you shared something with me that I thought was truly powerful, and I'm excited to dive into that particular chapter, sacred spaces. Could you share a little bit more? When people think about a space, they think about maybe a confined room. There's so many levels, would you agree, on what that sacred space could be and mean? And I just feel like that's just like a golden nugget, an extra teaser about your book.
Yeah, and I think it might be even a gold mine because there's so much information to be unpacked in that one topic of sacred spaces is a gold mine because there's so much information that goes into it and that can be unpacked. So sacred spaces is creating a dedicated space in your room for meditation, for prayer, connecting with the Most High, art, music, whatever it is that you do to get closer to who you truly are, create a space where you can go into that space and practice your art or practice your prayer or practice your meditation. Having a dedicated space creates in your mind what's called an anchor. This is in psychology. Sigmund Freud and all these guys, Carl Jung, talk about anchor. NLP, as NLP linguist, you know what an anchor is. But this is not just a word. This is an actual physical location that becomes an anchor. So every time you go to this physical location, your brain is consciously trained to enter a state of whatever state you want it to be. It could be that creative state we talked about. It could be a meditative state, a state of prayer, surrender, worship. But having that sacred space allows your mind and allows your body to go into higher states of consciousness that previously would not be available to you. And that's just the first layer of a sacred space. Thus, the higher level or the deeper level would be to acknowledge what it truly is that I'm saying. And the word is an altar. The deeper word, but I wanted to take that word out because I didn't want it to have a religious context. But what I'm truly talking about is an altar and having a dedicated space within your home to connect with whatever metaphysical energy that you want to connect with. If you read the Bible, in the Bible, the word altar, it appears in the Bible more times than the word prayer. If you look at Cain and Abel, they fought over the altar because Abel's altar and his sacrifice was acceptable to the Lord. And Cain's sacrifice and offering on his altar was not favorable in the eyes of Yahweh. So because of that, they had a falling out. But what I'm getting at is that Abel, his offering was acceptable in the sight of his creator. And so then he was given divine favor, divine covering, divine blessings. So by creating a sacred space in your home, you're also creating the portal. It's a portal between you and a higher realm that can allow you to experience blessings, divine favor, depending on what you put on the altar, depending on what you are doing in that sacred space. Now, if you're smoking cigarettes on your sacred space and you're drinking alcohol in your sacred space, and that's going to become an altar for some type of, different energy. It's not going to be an anchor for your higher consciousness. It's probably going to be an anchor that draws you down. And that can have its own benefits, maybe, but hey, that's on you if that's what you want to do. But if you're burning incense, if you're burning sage, if you're bringing, like mine, I have more like symbolic things. Like I have an image of Yeshua on my altar. I have a candle, a white candle on my altar. So it symbolizes purity of my intentions, purity of my spirit. I have it's kind of funny, but I have a Pokemon card on my altar, and it's just a fire. It's like an elemental card. It's called the fire element, and because in the scripture it says that when God accepts your your offering, He delivers fire. So I always keep the fire right there to remind me, like God is accepting, and He's favoring my offering. I have like a necklace that says God on it, and it reminds me that, and I could put it on too and pray. And it's also like an amulet that I can imbue with my vibration. And every time I pray, that amulet or that necklace becomes an anchor as well. And when I take it off, I could be feeling bad the next day. Come back and put that on, and it'll help me to boost my consciousness, my vibration. So these are really ways that we can raise our vibration and enter higher states of consciousness. And once we do that, we can make decisions about our lives and truly make changes. And that's why it's called an altar. Altar is where you make a change. And that's what the word alter means. It's a synonym, right? To alter something is to change it. You're in an altered state of consciousness. That means you're in a different state of consciousness than you were in normal life. This is what we're creating where we build a sacred space.
That's beautiful. I believe in everything that you just said and shared. Something that came to mind when you were speaking about portals and sacred spaces. I believe that we should also consider ourselves and recognize ourselves to be a sacred space. So hold that vessel, our body, our mind, our spirit as a place to honor with integrity. And going back to what you said earlier about sharing ourselves with people, the dating scene or externally searching, very much in the same way that we create this sacred space in our home or in our office or even outside. Some people use nature as a sacred space, an escape to remember and discover ourselves again. Would you agree or have anything to add to that?
I would just add that it's important that your sacred space is a place where you can visit it frequently, not something that's like, I'm going to go to a different sacred space every day, because the intention is to create an anchor. It's like when people get into the car, every time they smoke a cigarette, that's
Mm-hmm.
a habit for them. So every time they get into the car, that's like their sacred space where they're smoking. Now they're so, and so when they say, okay, I'm going to quit smoking, every time they get into the car, their first instinct is to light a cigarette. And that's the hardest part for them to overcome, because they've built that into their nervous system, right? So that's where the sacred space, it gets a little bit more refined. You want to make sure that you're visiting a location that anchors in your mind as this is what it is designated for. And it can be in nature. I believe that the Hebrews in the Bible, they built small altars in the wilderness, and they would worship Yeshua in the wilderness. And those small altars made of sticks and leaves, like, were honored by Yahweh because they were authentic. So also it doesn't have to be like something elaborate and like some fancy monument. It doesn't have to be all that. It could just be a desk, a lamp with a chair, you know. But make sure that it's a place where you're visiting frequently, because again, your frequency is what you frequently see. So you want to create that anchor. It's like somebody sitting on the couch and watching television. That's in a way the concept of the sacred space. But what are you putting into your mind? If you're putting in violence, then you're creating a sacred space for violence. If you're watching nothing but scary movies, then you're creating a sacred space for negativity. But if you're sitting down and it's like, okay, every time I turn the TV on, I'm going to watch something positive. I'm going to watch something uplifting. I'm going to watch something encouraging. It's going to feel different when you sit down on that couch. You're going to be expecting positivity. And so that's the state of mind that we want to get into more frequently. But we don't want to just be in front of the TV all day. We want to be sitting in our own space that we create and broadcasting the frequencies that we want to broadcast and also receiving the frequencies that we want to receive, not just letting the television programmers control what we see and what we hear. We need to be the ones who are in control of that first before we open up our minds to what they're telling us. You know, that's why it's important. You have to have your own discernment and your own ability to see what is true, what is false. Okay, I'm getting my information from infinite intelligence before I get it from artificial intelligence. I can consult artificial intelligence, but first I'm going to consult infinite intelligence by going into my sacred space, by turning the lights off, by meditating, by going into a deeper state of consciousness, by asking the questions that I want to know the answers to. I can follow up with ChatGPT, but I'm not just going to go straight to the machines. I'm not just going to go straight to the television. I'm not going to go straight to the radio. We got to find that sacred space first and then go seek information elsewhere. But that information elsewhere is oftentimes just validation of the truth that we already know. You know.
Fascinating. Would you be so kind as to share what you are currently learning and perhaps unlearning about yourself or this journey?
Well, to be honest, there has always been an underlying understanding in my mind of who I am. Ever since I saw The Matrix in 1999, I knew I was the one. And everything up until this point has aligned with that belief. And I do think it's not because I am so special. I think it's because the mind is that powerful and that everyone should learn that if you believe, whatever you conceive, you can achieve, right? It doesn't make any sense for me to go from believing that I'm the one as a kid, then my first girlfriend in high school nicknaming me Solo, which is synonymous with the number one, to me becoming the protege of Sophia Stewart, who wrote The Matrix. I don't believe that there's any connection that makes that possible other than our mind is so powerful that we're able to create our own reality. I honestly have known this since the beginning, and I'm now in the stage of my life where I'm experiencing the fruits and I'm witnessing, you know, everything unfolding before me. But it's nothing new. I feel like King Solomon in Ecclesiastics when he said there's nothing new under the sun. It's all vanity and it's all meaningless, and that's when for me things become sad because it's like you put so much energy and time and life and pain and struggle into these things to build up your life and it's meaningless. But it also is so liberating and it's actually hilarious the mistakes that you make in life. All of the people that said that you were this or that or didn't approve of you or rejected you or whatever. It's all meaningless. It doesn't matter. And so it all becomes just creating for the joy of creating, right? And that's what we're doing is we're just creating because it feels good. We know that at the end of the day, nobody might remember who I am. Nobody might remember us, but it feels good. It feels great. I feel amazing. And I hope you do as well. And
Thank you.
that's why we do this because we want to help other people to feel this way too. It's just a joy. DJ Khaled said it best. He said, knowing is better than learning. Knowing is better than learning. The more you learn, the more you earn. Sure. But don't get me wrong. Like in this life, we want to make profits and we want to make progress. So we want to learn as much as we can. But at the same time, knowing what do you know? See, this is where you go into your space. This is where you go into your higher consciousness. Because in the scripture it says we do not lean on our own understanding, right? But we trust in the Lord with all of our heart. That means that we don't need to have all the information. We don't need to have all the knowledge. Oh, the knowledge is the knowing, but we don't need to have all the information. All we need is the faith. We walk by faith, not by sight. So, that's what we're getting into is like, okay, what are we creating? I know it's going to work out. It feels right for me. And then we're doing it.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Very well said. There's so many treasures within this conversation. I am confident that the viewers watching and I myself are going to take away so much from this conversation. And again, I can't thank you enough for being here. I did want to bring up your book and your music and anything that you might have in the future.
You can find my book on Amazon. If you search Soloism, Soloism. My name is Solomon Yemane. If you follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is at Thank You Solo. If you follow me on Instagram, you can get it from me directly. I will sign it for you. I'll ship it to you. I also have an audio version I can send to you, and I have the digital copy that I can also email to you. So, having me is going to be how you get the most value for sure. When it comes to my music, next month, July 2nd, I'm releasing a mixtape. It's called Street Kid. It's directed towards the lower income youth. And I believe that our relationship with the streets is probably the most important relationship that we can have. In business, I was taught the principle is when you serve the masses, you live with the classes. When you serve the majority of people, then you live above those people, not because you're better than them, but because you've provided a service to so many people. That's what I want to do is I want to actually target the people who are not rich. And I want to unify those people. And I believe that there's going to be so much power in me unifying these disenfranchised youth because there's so much power in it. But if we're looking at where we are right now in history, and we're looking at, the Epstein files, and it's coming out that there's all this collusion in the government, and that there's pipelines from the public school system to the human trafficking system and the orphanages and war-torn countries. These places are all being exploited, and these people are all being exploited by the government that's supposed to protect them. And so when I talk about street kid, I'm really talking about those people who don't have a voice, and those people who are going through so much, but are really a gold mine of information and knowledge and wisdom and love, and they're great people. They just need to be taken care of and some attention, some TOC. And, I want to bring those people together. And I also want to teach them how to raise their vibration. That's a part of the collective consciousness. We can't just like serve the middle class and expect everybody in the world to change. If we want to change the world, I believe it's going to start with the streets, the people that we're walking over and telling them to get a job, and they don't have a dollar, and they're asking you for a dollar, and they're sleeping on the side of the street. We need to change that, and if we can like imbue those people with higher consciousness, then that I think is like really an amazing start. That's actually the only start, because it's not going to help for the higher upper class and the middle class to be so enlightened and they're so educated and they're so wow successful, but then there's this whole underbelly of people who are just suffering, and what use is your ingenuity if you're not using it to serve the people who are suffering? What good is your genius if you're not using it to serve the people who are poor? Like, so that's what my goal is to use my ingenuity and my genius and my excellence that's in my DNA, that was set in motion years before I was even born, and all my ancestors leading up into this moment. We're going to use all of our power to to raise the vibration of those people who are considered street kids, you know. And then I also want to be an example for those street kids to say, like, hey, man, I was there too. That's like, that is a very important message. I need to be able to reach those kids and say, hey, man, I was there too. I'm not just the guy in a suit with the book and I'm on stages talking. I'm not just him. I was you. Here, and guess what? You can be where I am and beyond that. But you know, they'll need a role model. They'll need a mentor. They need a guide. So that's who I want to be because who else is going to do it? I don't see anybody else doing it. So I think it's time for somebody to attend to these children and give them someone to look up to. You know,
Absolutely. Well, I had two last questions for you, but you just answered them beautifully. The first question was, what does it mean to you to live a conscious or elevated life? And I think that you expressed that clearly. The other question that I had for you was, what types of conversations do you think the world needs to be having more of that we're not having enough of? If you have anything else to add to it, what we need to be focusing on more of and not giving attention to other things that aren't meaningful are going
oh
to help people.
yeah, I do want to reiterate what we need to focus on, or what I can only speak for myself. But what I truly believe that the world needs to focus on is their own ingenuity. And that word ingenuity is so important because if you break it down, it's in gene. So it's in your genes, this ingenuity, this ingenious mind, right? And that word is also from the root of the word genie, right? So this is where you can manifest your dreams, your wishes, reality, right? So this ingenious mind that we all have within us is what we need to go within and find and seek and get to know and cultivate because without that, that's how people are manipulated. That's how talented individuals are manipulated because they may have talent, but they didn't utilize that ingenious mind. So they were manipulated by a record label or manipulated by an abusive lover or manipulated by somebody who took advantage of them, right? They were made to feel like you can't succeed unless you go to this party and participate in acts that you don't want to participate in. You're not going to be successful without doing it. But if I say, you know what, there's something inside of me that will allow me to still succeed without participating in those acts, without being a part of that system because of what's in my genes, in my DNA, which is an ingenious mind, right? I can do what I desire because they don't hold the key to my destiny. I hold the key to my destiny, right? They don't hold the key to my fate. I hold the key to my fate. And that's how we can unlock it. It's in our genes, ingenuity, right? Unlock that genetic code within yourself. Sophia Stewart has a book, Matrix 4, Unlocking the Genetic Code. That book is an amazing read, but do some research on bloodlines, genetics, and also my book, Soloism. You know, it'll help you to understand everything that I'm saying.
I love it. So I'm just going to play advocate for those that have said to me in the past, well, that's easier said than done. That's easier for you. You don't know who I surround myself with. You don't understand my family dynamic. I feel so alone, even though I'm surrounded with many people, but many people around me are traveling down a different path. And I don't know how to shift into a space where I can open myself up to this new way of being. Is there any advice that you have for somebody who feels like they're maybe trapped and don't know what step, just one step they could take to go forward to discover themselves while feeling so consumed or influenced by the people that are not living or interested in living a new life and traveling down a new pathway and where they want to go through life and love and elevation.
It just sounds to me like this person is completely valid in their way of seeing it because I was groomed by the Most High at a young age to be solo. So they're right. It is easier for me maybe than it is for the next person, but it wasn't easy. My journey was very difficult. So for me to be where I'm at, it has become a natural part of who I am. But what I would say is, though you're correct, at one point I was where you are. I was where you are at a point. And for me, I went through a lot of pain and suffering. And if I was to help you and save you from all that pain and suffering, what I would do is say, we got to learn how to set boundaries, and it may be difficult at first to set those boundaries, but, boundaries are very important because they protect you from people who want to take advantage of you. And when you set those boundaries, it allows you to say, hey, like when I'm just waking up, I don't want anybody to call my phone before 11 a.m. I'm doing my ritual and my morning routine. I'm getting my mind right for the day. And that is a boundary that you have every right to set for yourself. And if those people, and they may get offended, that's a part of being who you are. It's like you may have to set boundaries and put your foot down on those boundaries. And not everybody's gonna like it. But guess what? That protects you from the people who don't respect your boundaries. And so that's where I would start is like set some boundaries if you can. The start is realize that not everybody's gonna like everything that you do. You can't make everybody happy. Sometimes what you want will upset somebody else because what you want directly conflicts what they want. But when you learn to set boundaries, not only does it take away their excuse because you're saying, hey, you know, I don't I don't eat meat. So don't take me to any burger restaurants, please. I don't want to go to any burger restaurants. Take me to places where I have vegetarian options, please. And if you're not gonna take me there, then I don't want to go out. That's a boundary that you can set for yourself and that people have to respect it. And they might not like you, they might not like it, but that's good. Because guess what? Now it's filtering out the people who want to be with you and the people who don't really want to be with you the way you are. Right. So that's what we gotta start is recognizing like you can tell people no, you can say no, you can say this is what I want, and I'm sorry that it's not aligned with what you want, and be okay with that. To set boundaries around those things that you want because not everybody's gonna be for you. But everything breaks down to mathematical percentages. Out of 7 billion people on earth, you're gonna find 5 or 6 people who love you. So just keep on moving forward, setting your boundaries, staying strong, don't compromise. And eventually the people who are meant to be in your life will be there. Soloism is kind of about enduring the time until then. It's like people will arise and then you're going to be in a whole different world. This is where my next book comes in. But for now, where you're feeling alone and isolated, this will get you to the point where you don't need anybody else. You don't need anyone. But that is when the people will appear because it's not out of a dependence. It's not out of a codependence. It's not out of a need, or some type of desperation. You're not forming trauma bond relationships. You're actually forming relationships with people who like you for who you are. And guess what? When you don't need people, that's when you're going to reveal who you really are to them. When you need people, you're going to put on a performance. Hey, how you doing? I'm the nicest guy in the world. They'll never know you. But if you don't need people, you'll treat them all how you are. You'll say an offensive joke. If they laugh, guess what? You just made a friend. You know what I mean? It's okay. Just be yourself. So these are just the things that I think will help the world in a better way, to move in a more positive direction. Just be yourself. There's somebody out there who is aligned with who you are. So just keep on being who you are. I don't want to change anybody. I just want them to experience more peace.
Sounds like honoring yourself, setting healthy boundaries,
Yeah,
and having integrity.
exactly. And not compromising yourself to feel love. Love yourself first. And love yourself enough to know that when you compromise, you're just not respecting your true self. Yeah, you're just not being true to yourself. And I feel like that is the ultimate betrayal. How can you be in a relationship with somebody or a friendship with somebody when you're betraying yourself? That's not gonna have a happy ending. So just be true to yourself. You know, follow your heart, guys.
Solomon, thank you for sharing your time, your perspective, and your journey with us. I also appreciate you taking the time to share your new book, Soloism. For those of you who are watching, I will be sure to share all of his links where you can connect with him, where you can contact him, where you can locate and purchase his book. I think that one of the most powerful reminders from today's discussion is that growth doesn't always happen in the noise. Sometimes it happens in the quiet moments, in reflection and stillness, in the spaces where we're willing to listen a little bit more closer to our inner wisdom. So, to everybody listening, I hope that today's conversation has inspired you to pause, reflect, and perhaps explore a little more deeply the relationship you have with yourself and the life that you're creating. Solomon, thank you again for joining us on Elevated Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me, Diana. I really appreciate you and your existence.
Thank you. Likewise. And to the listeners, thank you for being here and sharing your time and energy with us, and for continuing to explore what it means to live with greater awareness, intention, and purpose. Until next time, keep elevating your life, your perspective, and your conversations. We will see you on the next episode of Elevated Conversations.